Hi, how's it going, everybody? This is Novakast back with another video, and in this one we'll be at least responding to a video from K9-Aversion, which is titled Dogs and Autism, which I can only assume will be really, or actually grossly insensitive towards, individuals who involve themselves with dogs, as well as, people who have to deal with autism. Because once again, K9-Aversion is an individual who is, or tries to claim to be, intellectual with some of the topics that she discusses, only to face palm or actually not face palm, more like face plant when she is corrected on some of the stupid things that she decides to say. Again, including stuff that is insensitive to certain individuals that she obviously doesn't understand. But why don't we just go ahead and get into this, because yeah, this lady's kind of an idiot.
The dog is one of the few things in life that has been discovered or invented twice.
I don't know why she's trying to make the remark that dogs were quote-unquote invented, since in some studies, research dictates that dogs evolved from wolves probably closely to 130,000 years ago. And through the years, a variety of different breeds have been created through, to some degree, inbreeding, as well as, a variety of other factors. So, to an extent, the name, or the using the term invented, is grossly incorrect. I'm sorry. Well, sorry, but not sorry.
The first discovery was when humans realized that dogs had a very desirable talent that they could take advantage of. That talent the dog had was to create fear in other creatures.
Any living creature on this planet can induce fear to another. You do realize that statement, right? It's not just dogs that induce fear. Humans induce fear. A variety of animals like bears, wolves, lions, larger animals, they induce fear. It's a natural response in anything on this planet. Especially when it comes to dealing with an animal or an individual or a situation that you have no control of, or if anything, don't understand. I mean, the basic, per one of my favorite writers, the greatest fear is fear of the unknown. Basically. That's part of the quote from H.P. Lovecraft. So, or to give you the full quote, the oldest and greatest emotion is fear, and the oldest and greatest fear is fear of the unknown. Not understanding a situation or a creature adds more to the fear. So, to an extent, don't act as if dogs are the only ones that produce fear. That's inaccurate. Stop being this. This is stupidity in its maximum extent.
Once discovered, this ability could be harnessed and directed through training for a variety of purposes. Dogs could be used to guard and protect, acting as both a deterrent and a defense in the case of animal or human attack.
It's kind of funny when she acknowledges the fact that, dogs have a purpose or have a reason for why they were brought into human society. But I'm sure, in that case, it's a bad thing, right? Because, dogs doing what they do naturally, or doing things involving, proper training, is quote-unquote bad. Give me a fucking break.
Dogs would make aggressive and anxiety-provoking noises to scare intruders, and then follow up by vicious attacks.
Same goes for a lot of other animals, but you don't talk about them, now do you?
Dogs could be trained to herd and control other animals by stalking them, instilling fear, and directing the movements of these animals.
Again, it's always funny, like in the past, where she tries to claim that there's no purpose for dogs, yet you're clearly discussing the fact that we have trained dogs to perform certain tasks. Just like how I've said in a variety of my videos that besides, herding or, hunting and gathering, like they've been used in the past, like way, way, way in the past, we have used them nowadays for a variety of other means. But again, you want to continuously claim that they have no purpose. Your credibility becomes less and less with some of the things you say and the contradictions that you bring up in your own logic.
Dogs could be used to exercise power over other humans, suppressing their freedom of movement.
Not really, especially if you, again, because I have to make this argument time and time again, know how to, interact, or if anything, how to deal with certain animals, as well as have, knowing your research when it comes down to dealing or interacting with dogs or animals in general. Again, I have to make this argument every single time because clearly this lady doesn't fucking get it.
I have made videos about the use of dogs in the slave trade, warfare, and in conquering other nations.
Which I'm sure nobody's going to watch, or at least, the only people are going to watch it is, more likely the people that drank the Kool-Aid. But more likely the people are going to look at those videos are going to think that you're fucking insane. Especially with some of the claims you make about dogs and people who own dogs in general.
Dogs could be used to hunt down, pursue, kill, and retrieve other species.
Other animals do the same.
Their sense of smell could indicate the presence of the prey animal. Then, their aggressive barking could make the animal break cover, or direct it in the path of humans ready to kill it.
Isn't that the purpose of hunting, though? I mean, especially when it comes down to using an animal to... I'm trying to understand, is she trying to shame people that, used hunting dogs for, hunting? The very thing where they go and collect food or hunt down food? I'm sorry, but especially when it comes... I'm trying to understand this logic, because especially when it comes down to using a dog, especially a dog that has a sense of smell. By the way, fun fact, because I went and looked up animals that have the strongest sense of smell. Broad, I'm using a broad kind of any animal. Bloodhound is apparently one of the first animals that comes up involving the canine family, and it is the fourth out of an entire, a huge list. Or at least, a list of a few animals that have the strongest, known smell or sense of smell. Where the first one being the African giant pouch rat, next being the silver-tip grizzlies, the great white shark, the kiwi, and then finally being the greyhound. So if anything, that is probably number 5 on that list. So it's not the the one that has the best sense of smell, or at least the greatest sense of smell, but it is up there. But going back to my question, you're really going to shame people, especially people who, again, are hunting, who more likely are gathering food, hunting animals, so that way they can, more likely, let's for the sake of argument, not using it for sport, but more likely doing this for, to collect food for their families. Are you going to shame somebody for using that extra edge to use a bloodhound or a particular hunting animal to sniff out prey and initially use it to try to push that animal out of cover? I'm sorry, but I'm trying to understand this logic, as well as why you're trying to shame people for doing something that would give them an edge in hunting, and more likely, again, for the sake of argument, more likely to gather food for themselves and their family. If anything, it seems like you're the one that's insensitive.
Since dogs are faster than humans, they could pursue the prey animal and tire it out, so that it was tired and vulnerable once the human hunters caught up. Dogs in packs could pursue and kill a variety of prey animals, making life easier for their human owners. Dogs would be involved in blood sports for the wealthy elite, hunting deer and foxes, for example.
Or collecting food for their families.
Dogs could provide entertainment and gambling profit for the non-elite in pursuits such as hare coursing, badger baiting, bull baiting, bear baiting, rat baiting, and dog fighting.
Okay, I'm gonna meet you on equal terms here, because some of the description or some of the things you listed are things that are not just cruel to the animals that are being baited or hunted, especially when they're using packs of animals or packs of dogs to do this, but in the sense of also more likely being very harmful to the dogs. Because again, I myself am somebody who cares for not just one in particular animal, but a variety of others. And with quite a few things that you listed, like the badger baiting or bear baiting or whatever, that stuff is not just harmful to the bears, but also harmful to the dogs, especially when more likely a few of those dogs are going to get seriously hurt. So to some degree, I know you won't see it as meeting you halfway here, or meeting you part way, but to some extent I agree. Some of those things is cruel, and I think the mass majority of them are illegal. So to some grand degree, I don't agree with those. Now watch as somebody from her cult more likely look at this segment and take a huge mile out of what I just said. And more likely, piss themselves because, oh my gosh, he said a K9-Aversion was right about something. Fuck off. I said one thing. One thing I actually agree with her with. Don't confuse it as if me claiming that she is completely right. That's not true. That's like when recently in my comments, one of her cronies was trying to take me out of context with some of the things I say, which goes to show your own credibility when you want to take things out of context, especially when it comes to a conversation or a topic that you don't understand.
The first invention of the dog was all about utilizing the natural aggression of the dog in a variety of ways. The dog created fear and terror, was its reason for being.
I have to disagree. I don't think that's the case, but continue.
Its unique selling point. According to Wikipedia, the dog was first domesticated in Siberia 23,000 years ago.
Looking at a PBS article, it talks about how around 130,000 years ago was when wolves were domesticated, or around that time, and discusses how dogs eventually evolved from wolves due to constant inbreeding. And a variety of other species started to pop up. And in turn, due to constant inbreeding or outbreeding, or whatever you would call it, we got more and more species of dogs as time progressed.
So this first invention of the dog lasted for a very significant period of time.
I've been kind of wondering why she's just calling dogs an invention, rather than calling them a living thing, or at least something that comes from evolution. And I think it just dawned on me why she's doing this. And it's actually a clever tactic. Because at this point, especially when it comes down to K9-Aversion, she doesn't want to acknowledge the dog as a living thing or part of natural, what's going on in nature. She doesn't want to acknowledge it. She wants to acknowledge it as just a quote-unquote an invention or a thing that we created. When really, again, due to inbreeding from wolves and variety of other animals, or at least not other animals, but wolves inbreeding from each other, that's how dogs were created. It's not like, oh, we created it. No. Through a variety of inbreeding, dogs and a variety of other species were created through the constant inbreeding.
Dog worshippers want to pretend that this never happened. They want to believe that there has been an unbroken history of snuggling, unconditional love, and what they want to describe as symbiosis.
Well, take a look at the definition for symbiosis. It basically describes the interaction between two different organisms living in close physical association, typically to the advantage of both. So, in some situation, or at least when it comes down to earlier history, when it comes down to humans using dogs as hunting animals, and dogs, or at least wolves, or, as time progressed, dogs using, the humans to, as a source of food, to some extent, that would classify as a symbiotic relationship. And no amount of, you denying it is going to escape that fact. As well as dogs feeling love or emotions, there's already been research studies that prove that dogs can feel emotions. Not advanced emotions, but feel emotions in general. And this whole thing about, people wanting to snuggle up with their dogs or whatever, really, who the fuck cares? And if anything, I think I have to point this out again, because I made this remark multiple times in my previous video talking about this person. Why do you give a fuck on what other people do? It's none of your fucking business.
The second invention of the dog has a very recent history and seeks to completely overturn history, erasing the true nature of human-dog interaction for thousands of years and replacing it with a narrative more acceptable to modern sensibilities.
I'm sure the only people that actually want to change history is, you and your Kool-Aid induced cronies.
With the second invention, dogs stopped being an animal exploited for its aggressive nature and was transformed into a creature of comfort, love, compassion, and safety. This new dog became something that belonged in the home rather than the field or the forest. Not only did it belong in the home, it was now so desired that the aim was that every home should have one. There was something wrong if you didn't have or didn't want a dog.
I don't know where she's getting her information, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's that perspective of, if you don't own a dog, that you should be shamed. It's only a matter of perspective of whether or not you want a dog or not. Or if anything, it's more of your choice. I think that I should say. If you don't want a dog, okay, that's fine. If you're afraid of dogs, okay, that's fine. But at the same time, you shouldn't shame people for not feeling the same way as you. And that's the gist of it, really. Just as, people who own dogs shouldn't shame people who are afraid of dogs, there's that perspective of people who are afraid of dogs shouldn't shame people who own dogs. It's that fucking simple. But clearly it isn't, especially when you have individuals like K9-Aversion who I guess, again, with anything, allows her own delusions to get the best of her. Or allows her own fears and delusions to dictate what she says and does. Now, speaking of her delusions, because for a good chunk of the video, she nitpicks and just continues to just talk out of her ass when it comes down to the purposes of, the dog. So, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, because, again, it's just useless dribble for a good, I want to say 5 minutes. So, here we go. Back to the video.
As time goes on, there is a kind of desperation attached to discovering new uses for the dog.
Not really a desperation, considering, again, humans have found a variety of different reasons or methods to use dogs. And you mentioned a couple of them, but at the same time, nitpick every single one of them to make it seem like, oh, that's not a thing that dogs should be used for. When clearly, people have found a way to use them. It's like putting pineapple on pizza. You have those people that complain about the fact that you put pineapple on your pizza and say it's blasphemy, but clearly there is a high demand, or if anything, a use for putting pineapple on pizza, and therefore, people use it. So, to some degree, you want to complain about the fact that, dogs have their uses, or say that they should be only used for a certain thing, but at the same time, unironically acknowledging the fact that dogs have their purpose in human society. It's like talking to a child.
For example, teaching children to read. Clearly, there is a very limited scope to develop the role of the dog as an educator.
So, I'm trying to understand this because it's very nitpicky. Her trying to claim that, oh, we can't use the dogs as a, or it isn't proven for dogs to be used as an educator. What the fuck? I'm sorry, but when it comes down to children reading to, dogs, because there's several programs that allow this or have this set up. The reason they do this is to try to improve the child's skill in reading, which is a major situation, or if anything, a major benefit to the program or programs that do this. Allowing the child that is trying to learn to read to have somebody who, by the way, to an extent, won't judge them, given the opportunity to, practice reading. And I'm sorry. I have a link in the description so you guys can look at one of the programs that does this. But in more so, it's more to benefit children. And honestly, if it helps children and it's been proven to help children, I don't see the problem, really. I'm sure, if anything, K9-Aversion is only going to talk about how, oh, they poop or pee. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure when it comes down to that argument, they usually have well-trained dogs that show up at the property for these programs. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm not going to show you guys the rest of the video, because at this point, especially with her nitpicking, just the last bit of the video is her nitpicking every little thing when it comes down to the implication of dogs being used other than what nature has intended for them. And to some degree, is again, with it being kind of very biased, with her, I guess, again, with her fears and delusions getting in the way of actual research and looking into some of the things that have occurred over the years, it's unbearable. So, to a major degree, I'm not going to put you guys through that, especially when she tries to make up the implication, or at least discusses the implications of using only electrical devices, or certain electrical devices, to help with your ills, or using emotional animals, except for dogs, or emotional support animals that are, different from dogs, which is kind of ironic, especially when, an emotional support animal is an animal that you have grown fond of, or if anything, not just fond of, but gives you a sort of comfort. And to exclude dogs from this title is kind of hypocritical, especially when certain people have some kind of emotional, I guess, fondness, or if anything, have a sense of emotional calm when these animals are present. So, to some degree, again, I'm not going to subject you guys to the last bit of that video because it is very nitpicky, and she just runs her mouth for a good, while. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. If you guys can, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below, as well as check out our daily content and the weekly podcast. With that being said, this is Novakast signing off. Have a good one, and take care. Peace.